Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Let's get after it.
The Scientology speedrun trend has become so big, all of the Scientology churches around Canada and America have had to literally remove the doorknobs from their doors and close them down for the first time ever since Scientology began. If you don't know, the trend involves filming and running inside of a Scientology church to see how far through the church you can get. And it's just huge. Look, you can see in this video, there's dozens and dozens of kids that just speed run through wearing masks, and it's kind of put the Scientology church in a kind of a catch-22 scenario. They need to recruit people from the streets, so they need to bring people in from the streets to recruit them. But they can't, because these kids are, as you can see here, they're linking arms to try and stop them from getting through the church, because they had security guards. But that's how this worked out. They just rip through them and just run through. It's wild.
I'm not going to sit here and openly promote breaking and entering or disrupting someone's business or whatever you want to call these Scientology buildings. And I fully believe that we should all have the right to choose our own religion. But I think after everything that's come out in regards to Scientology over the last several years, all the Leah Remini interviews and documentaries, all that stuff with Danny Masterson, along with many other very high-profile individuals who have recently left Scientology, and they're exposing everything. With all of that coming out, I don't think that this is just a bunch of teenagers starting a trend. I think this is society trying to course correct. Almost everyone I've ever talked to about Scientology knows someone personally who's gotten wrapped up in it. I used to work with a guy who got wrapped up in it. I have seen firsthand how some of their teachings can completely destroy someone's life. And the entire time that these people are throwing their whole life away, they don't view it as I'm experiencing these hardships because of Scientology. They feel guilty, like they're not doing enough for Scientology. That's some serious brainwashing. And since the government's not going to do anything to stop this cult, they've kind of given society as a whole no other option. I would even guess that most people, even the people who wouldn't get involved in doing something like this, would not take Scientology serious as a religion. Everybody looks at it as a cult. Everybody views it as a joke. It's going to be really interesting to see where this one goes, though. That would be awesome if we're literally witnessing the beginning of the fall of Scientology. I know it's one of the youngest religions that we have today, but in my opinion, it has vastly overstayed its welcome.
The P-47s and P-52s may have been going back further in time than we thought. So check this out. In 1918, known occultist and Satanist Aleister Crowley and his partner, Roddy Minor, went through this 5-month-long summoning ritual called the Amalantra Working, trying to contact what we would call interdimensional beings, these praetor-human intelligences. And apparently, he made contact with one. It was a non-physical, non-human intelligence he called Lamb. And he even made a drawing of this entity in his notebook. As you can see, Lamb had this huge bald head, thin neck, tiny mouth, and these unsettling eyes. And what does that look like? Yeah, that kind of looks like some kind of gray alien, or one of the P-47s and P-52s. It's a pretty uncanny resemblance, and what if there's some connection here and something to this idea? At the time Crowley contacted Lamb, barely anyone in the early 20th century was thinking of aliens, never mind the Greys, and his drawing was made decades before the modern UFO phenomena was even a thing. So who or what was Lamb? Well, since Crowley was an occultist, a lot of people believe Lamb was a demon. Is that why a bunch of you think that aliens are demons? And then there's the camp that thinks that Lamb may have actually been a gray alien. And if Lamb was an alien, and aliens are actually us from the future, according to people like Amy Eskridge and Hal Puthoff, is it possible there is a connection here with the P-47s and P-52s, and this being was able to contact Crowley further back in time from us through some kind of dimensional portal? Anyway, they kind of look similar to me, but what do you think?
My opinion on this one is not really set in stone at the moment, but what I'm leaning toward is that either these gray aliens are a genetic experiment, and most of the aliens that we're about to see are going to be these gray aliens, and it's some sort of demon or fallen angel that has been genetically mixed with a human to give it this human-esque appearance so that we would be more trusting and so that we would be more gullible in believing the narrative that these are just us from the future. That's what I'm leaning toward, because I still can't get behind the idea that we've somehow in the future figured out time travel. Just the possibility of us eventually figuring that out, I feel like would completely destroy all of reality. And I'm betting whenever they do finally have the big reveal and they finally expose the aliens to us, I'm betting the only aliens that we're going to see are things like this. We're not going to see the rulers or the people who are actually in charge, who are running things. Because I think if we saw them, the jig is up. I'm betting they would be instantly recognizable from some of these hieroglyphs and stuff that we've seen in Egypt. I'm betting the only aliens that we're going to see are going to be like the worker bees, a bunch of creatures that they created through genetic experimentation specifically to put on the front line, specifically to be the ones who would step into harm's way, just in case the public were to react a little bit more violently than what they're hoping for.
It's being reported that UFOs took over nuclear missiles at a Russian base and may have gotten ready to launch those missiles. Watch this and see for yourself.
Former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, they were very, very close for years in giving each other information. He says UFOs appeared over a Russian missile base. This was also interesting. Again, now in the congressional record, UFOs appeared over the base, performed astonishing maneuvers in front of stunned eyewitnesses, and then somehow took control of the launch system. The missiles aimed at the U.S. were suddenly fired up. Launch control codes were somehow entered, and the base was unable to stop what could have been initiated World War III. Then just as suddenly the UFOs disappeared and the launch control system shut down. I mean, if you're not concerned about national security with this issue, I mean, that pretty much sums it up right there. If that's all true, and again, you talk about George Knapp's credibility, it's really alarming.
Well, and oddly enough, an event like that happened in the United States of America. You can research it. I can't recall the name of it right now, but it's been pretty well documented that the UFOs were sighted over a nuclear installation, and it was completely shut down, and they couldn't figure out what was going on with it. And to this day, they're not sure, other than the fact that there were UFOs flying around it.
If this is true that UFOs, whether they're extraterrestrial or something else, can take over nuclear weapons and do whatever they want with them, not to understate it, but we're in big trouble, baby. Let's just hope they're nice extraterrestrials like E.T. and not mean ones like Alien versus Predator. Shabadoo, Bushkis! Shabadoo!
I'm not really concerned with whether or not this actually took place. What I'm wondering is why they are reporting on it, because it seems to go directly against the narrative that they've been giving us now for years. We've all heard the stories of them showing up and stopping missile launches. We've heard the stories of them following aircraft that are fixing to deploy some missiles or some sort of explosives, and just before they can launch them, this craft shows up and hovers over them for a couple of minutes and completely deactivates everything. But all of the stories that we get about this type of scenario is always pushing the idea that these aliens are wanting peace, that they're trying to stop us from attacking each other. So clearly, since that's the narrative they've been giving us now for several years, that's more than likely the narrative they want us to believe. So I'm just curious now why they would tell us of an incident where these things supposedly activated nuclear weapons that were pointed at the United States. Are they changing the narrative now and they want us to view these things as a threat? All I know is they're very selective about what stories they send to the media. This one doesn't quite fit with the other stories that they've been giving us lately, and I find that pretty interesting. Why do y'all think they're telling us this story? What do you all think they're trying to get us to feel or to think by giving us this story?
Did you all see this? That the Artemis II Orion capsule, part of its heat shield fell off either before or during re-entry? Yeah, it was spotted by people on social media who watched the video over and over again. Now I'm old enough to remember the Apollo missions, and they were adamant back then. If something happened to that heat shield on re-entry, it would be devastating. But
that's
here
what they
it is,
say.
the Orion capsule from the Artemis mission with a chunk of heat shield missing, and everything turned out all right. And now, because of the people on social media pointing it out, mainstream press is talking about it too. Because how could that happen? That's like the most important thing for getting back to Earth alive. is to not have a failure in the heat shield, which just happened. I mean, NASA, like I'm telling you, was big about this during the Apollo missions. In fact, I found an article on NASA's own website from 4 years ago that said they tested that heat shield on the Orion capsule 10,000 times. Yeah, 10,000 times. And even though now,
says 1,000.
faced with the truth that part of it fell off, they're trying to say, it's not that big a deal. What? One of the most important things that they ever talked about with the moon missions 50 years ago and the space shuttle missions after that is now not that important. Now maybe it's just me, but something doesn't feel right here. Okay, I just wanted to share this with all of you, Booshkies. Shabadoo!
This is just one more thing to add to the long list of things that NASA has told us to then later go back and completely contradict whenever it didn't line up with current evidence. I just don't see how someone can see a story like this and not at least come to the conclusion, oh, I shouldn't be trusting what NASA tells me. Because either they were lying and that heat shield's not really that important, or they were telling the truth before, the heat shield is very important, and they're lying now because they don't want to expose themselves for lying about sending astronauts into space. Either way, they've been exposed as being liars. And if I know someone's a liar, I'm going to second guess everything they tell me. That is the logical thing to do. And with the size of the hole in that heat shield, along with what NASA themselves have told us about the importance of heat shields in the past, you would think that there would have been a hole melted clean through the bottom of that thing and it would have cooked everybody inside of it. Yet the chunk of the heat shield that's missing on the bottom of that craft doesn't even look like it's been on fire. It's the only part of the bottom of it that doesn't look charred. They are clearly lying. You can't believe anything they say.
You've got Tim Peake on the ISS, ready to do a live interview with this studio audience, and you've got this girl with a hoop and a ball, and she supposedly sent this experiment for Tim to do while on the ISS. Well, Tim did it on the ISS. He did it in front of a blue checkered screen and refused to do it live.
Now, Tim, you've also been doing some demonstrations for science students, and one of those science students is Emily. Now, you've got some kit there that you actually designed for Tim, really to just show how difficult it is to demonstrate physics here on Earth. And it's a track and a ball. Just show us what actually happens there. And gravity's really just pulling that ball back down. Now, Tim has actually done the same experiment. You weren't able to do it live, but you weren't able to do it live, but you weren't able to do it live, you weren't able to do it live, you weren't able to do it live. But we don't seem to have a video, unfortunately, but the ball can. The ball does continue all the way around. Just explain, Tim, what's happening.
I'd rather Tim explain why he couldn't do it live. Was it that hard to bring out the little hoop and ball? Or is it because the blue checkered backdrop allows them to basically CGI that apparatus into his hand? And that's why he's standing so still.
Yes, again, it's one of the phenomena of microgravity. It's a wonderful environment to demonstrate some of those basic scientific principles.
That is true. It's such a wonderful environment to demonstrate some of those basic principles of physics, however, not live.
How does it make any sense at all that physics interacting properly with two objects would be dependent on whether or not a camera is or is not broadcasting a live signal? That doesn't make a lick of sense. But seeing stuff like this, I'm just reminded of how easy it would be for them to actually prove that they were really in the ISS, for them to prove that we're really living on a globe, for them to prove that they really went to the moon. It would be so easy to give us actual evidence. Just the fact that they will not do that, just the fact that they aren't just constantly bombarding us with overwhelming amounts of evidence for a globe model, that in and of itself is all the evidence I need to tell me they're lying.
It's finally happening, you guys. Representative Eric Burleson, the congressman, held a private meeting with a bunch of pastors and preachers from different churches that all met together in the same state, got in the same room, and Congressman Eric Burleson told them that they need to prepare their congregations for the upcoming UFO disclosure that's about to happen. Now, A lot of people have speculated, oh, it's not going to happen. The Pentagon is too worried about the news coming out. They're not going to tell everybody. They're going to redact things or change it to fit their agenda or whatever. I don't know if that's really going to happen or not. But apparently pastors have been warned and been told that they need to begin to prepare their congregations that the United States is about to release the files that they have captured and discovered UFOs from archaeological digs, from capturing them out of the sky, from crashes, possibly Roswell, and that they are very strange entities. One of the rumors is that some of them are reptilian entities. The whole thing is really bizarre, but he's been telling the pastors in this private meeting that they need to start talking about this to their congregations to get them ready. So let's take a listen to what they had to say.
I had a friend that sent me a text message. I was in a meeting, a weekend meeting, preaching Friday, Saturday, and Sunday morning. And he said, Perry, can you give me a call? I have some information that has come to my attention. Of course, when a friend of yours does that you know quite well, you have no idea what information they're talking about. And I'm not going to go into great detail, but there were a large number of pastors that had been invited to go to a certain state to hear some men in the United States government and others share with them a concern that they had. And this particular man, and I'll not name him, and then we may end up doing some teachings with him or having an event at his church. He has a great church. But he said, Perry, what they're about to release, from what we're hearing, there's going to be a release concerning aliens and concerning unidentified flying object spacecraft, that some of the people who were in the meeting were telling us as pastors, you need to prepare your people and you need to get ready to answer them for what you're about to hear being released. And some of it has to do with crafts that have been discovered that are not allegedly a part of our planet, and the materials they're made of are not a part of our planet. Very strange reptilian-looking creatures, and other things that almost sound like something out of a sci-fi movie or an Orson Welles book.
Only a handful of pastors are invited to come to a private meeting with a group of men who are connected with the intelligence world, that are believers, but are still have very high security clearance. These are legit, true men of God that are still connected to Washington and even this current administration and all branches of military. And they literally told us, we had a sitting congressman, a very well-known congressman from Missouri. He called into that meeting as well, that was just for pastors. And this is what he said. On speakerphone, this sitting powerful member of Congress said, are the pastors listening to me? I'm getting chills right now because this happened to me. He said, are the pastors in the room listening to me? And I said, yes, sir, we are here. And he said, listen to me. Go and tell the church they are not ready for what is coming. The narrative that is coming, what they are going to say is going to be like nothing you can even imagine. They are preparing to tell us that they are from another dimension, that they are our creator, and that these beings, these aliens, or whatever you want to call them, they were the ones that seeded us here. There is no such thing as God. Jesus was invented by them. The Bible was invented by them. And begin to just say, listen, prepare the people for what is coming because they're not ready. But he loved us so much. He made sure that he told us exactly the blueprint to study. He said, study the days of Noah. And if you can understand how Noah responded, that's how you're going to have to respond. And I believe what God is doing in the body of Christ right now is getting us ready, because the world is going to have a lot of questions. The question for you is, are you going to be able to answer it?
What do you guys think? Is this all part of a big deception? Are they getting ready to roll out Project Bluebeam and they're going to fake something? Are they going to use some kind of hallucination with directed energy or holograms or something like that? Or is this actually real? Is this something that humanity is going to have to wake up to, that our reality is far stranger than people take on the surface. And if it's actually true, a lot of people are in for a rude awakening.
I feel like at this point in time, there is enough evidence pointing toward this idea that the government is finally going to come out and tell us something. I think that's genuinely about to happen. I don't think we're going to get the truth. I think we're going to have a narrative pushed to us, like with anything else that's designed to push a certain agenda. And I don't fully know what that agenda is other than what I know from Scripture. But regardless of how everything is about to play out, and I do genuinely feel like it's about to play out, but regardless of how everything goes down, it is kind of crazy to think about within the next 4 or 5 years, if you could just go to sleep today and wake up tomorrow and it be 4 or 5 years from now, it would probably be like waking up on a different planet. I have a feeling that things are about to change so drastically, it's going to feel like we're in a different reality. But as much as I'm expecting it, as convinced as I am that this is coming very soon, I don't think I'm prepared for it mentally, and I'm not convinced that I could get myself into a place where I could be mentally prepared for it. We're all about to collectively go through an experience that will be unique throughout all of human history. We're about to live through something that's never happened before. How could you possibly prepare yourself for something like that?
When Andre Carpathe speaks, just put on your seatbelt. This week he was on the No Priors podcast with Sarah Guell, and he dropped so many gems, it was like riding in a Formula One car with Lewis Hamilton driving, hoping you don't crash. Now if you want the full episode, comment auto research and I'll shoot it over to you. Because the backdrop of this whole conversation is he's coming off the backs of his new project called Auto Research. Agents running autonomously on a research project with no human in the loop for as long as possible. For all the parents out there, it's sort of like Bluey playing Keepy Uppy, trying to keep the balloon in the air as long as possible without actually having to hit it. That's basically Auto Research. One team was able to let Claude Code run loose on 910 experiments over an 8-hour period, 9 times faster than like a single human researcher. But here's one of the gems I really want to point out that founders should listen to.
In a certain sense, it does point to this, like maybe there's like an overproduction of lots of custom bespoke apps that shouldn't exist because agents kind of like crumble them up. Everything should be a lot more just like exposed API endpoints, and agents are the glue of the intelligence that actually like tool calls all the parts. All this should just be like make APIs available, you know, going towards the agentic sort of web or like agent first tools and all this kind of stuff. So I think the industry just has to reconfigure in so many ways that it's like the customer is not the human anymore. It's like agents who are acting on behalf of humans, and this refactoring will probably be substantial in a certain sense.
What I heard him saying is that apps shouldn't even exist. I mean, maybe not all of them, but most of them. Instead of building a custom UI that everyone has to go out and learn, you can just expose the API endpoints and let agents interact with them directly on the user's behalf. He calls it like ephemeral software. Basically, agents create UI on the fly just for their needs, not like static interfaces that were built 2 years ago. I mean, this isn't a small insight. This would completely rethink how software gets built. There was a bunch of these type gems throughout the episode. For example, models were spatiate. Basically, one Oracle model that we see now that knows everything, that's not going to be the future. There'll be more specialized models. He talks about the flop economy. Basically, he says in the future, the amount of compute that you have control over might matter more than how many dollars you have. And then you can contribute your compute to like global research swarms or other things that matter to you. He talks about the future of education. He said there'll basically be an end of us teaching each other things. Basically, the agents become these patient tutors that can re-explain and dumb down concepts until you get them. I mean, through this podcast, you realize Carpathe's not talking about what's happening now. He's talking about what's coming. And the gap between those things is exactly where the opportunity lies.
Here's a really good example of what I mean by everything's going to be completely different and it's going to feel like we're in a completely different reality. They want to do away with cell phones because they don't want us carrying a device. They want us to embed a device into the back of our hand or into our arm or something. And if you do that, you lose your screen. So everyone's been saying if we're all going to be using these implantables like Bill Gates wants, then how are you going to be able to look and get the information? But it would probably just be digitally dumped into your brain. And because there are no screens anymore, you don't need a user interface. All you need is access for your AI to be able to access and then utilize specific tools. And so instead of uploading a photo into Photoshop, adding it onto a layer, going up and selecting the clone tool, selecting a place in the photo that you want to clone, and then painting out an object in the background. Now you can just simply tell your AI, remove this object in the background of this photo, and it will go and access this Photoshop tool that you would have previously been the one using, and it will use that tool to perform the task. So since the AI is the one interacting with Photoshop, you don't really need a user interface because you're not the one that's actually doing anything, which tells me they want us fully dependent on AI. They don't even want us to know how to use software on our own. This does not sound like a future worth getting excited over. I think they should go back to the drawing board on this one. I think this is a horrible idea, and it's going to completely take away that feeling of fun and creativity whenever you're building something using software. And it's also going to take away that feeling of you being the one in control of what it is that you're creating. It's just going to feel like you're making suggestions and watching someone else enjoy performing art. But they definitely need to scratch this idea. But guys and gals, I'm going to go ahead and end the video right there. I hope you enjoyed these clips we watched together today. God willing, I'll be back tomorrow with another one. I hope you come back to join me. Don't forget to leave a like, and don't forget to drop a comment if you want to increase the odds of my future uploads showing up in your YouTube feed. But guys and gals, I hope everyone has a great, safe, fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you all in the next one.